Hello, you're listening to LOQPOD. My name's Katie Ringsdore, and today I'm joined by Guy Rigby. Now, Guy's a team of two people who are about to row across the Atlantic to raise some money for charity. Now, if they're successful in this venture at the end of the year, the records currently stand that they will be the oldest pair to ever row any ocean. I decided to have a chat with Guy to find out more about his venture. Guy, thank you very much indeed for joining me on LOQPOD today. So I've done a little introduction to you, but you're training for a 3,000-mile row across the Atlantic, which sounds like a massive job to me. Tell me a little bit about why.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I've been working all my life. I've done 50 years in the saddle come October, and I just decided that it was time to make a change, do something different, perhaps create some sort of segue between my full-time working career and perhaps some consultancy work later on. And I felt like I wanted to do something real, having pushed paper around desks all my life, advising entrepreneurs on how to grow their businesses and all that sort of stuff. I just thought it was time to go out there and do something real and indeed give something back. So we're doing this row to raise money for a charity called Unlimited, which is the Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs. What they do is they find, fund and support social entrepreneurs, typically in deprived areas. So that's what we're doing.
Now, there's a lot of training involved, and I know this because you and I have spoken previously about this fantastic adventure you're about to go on. I think an adventure would be the right word. Tell me a little bit about the training that's involved.
Well, I think there are lots of different elements to the training, actually. Obviously, there's the physical side itself, which involves, getting to, for a 68-year-old, which I am, getting to peak fitness, that is for a 68-year-old. So I mix that up. I do a bit of rowing, I do a bit of running, I do a bit of biking. And I've also, for the first time in my life, engaged a personal trainer who comes and makes me lift really heavy weights twice a week. And yeah, it's making a difference, actually. I'm feeling a lot fitter, and but it's difficult to prepare for something like an Atlantic row because we're going to be rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, 24 hours a day for 60 days, broadly. And so 12 hours of rowing a day is not something I'm going to actually train for here, sitting at home or getting ready for it. So we're going to do a bit of our training on the way. There's no doubt about that.
Actually, yeah.
So that's the physical side. Mentally, obviously, you've got to be up for it. 2.5 years ago, when I first thought of it, I was completely up for it. But as time goes on, it gets a bit more scary, a bit more challenging. The first week or so out at sea, seasickness, perhaps not being able to eat or drink, therefore, losing a lot of body weight, maybe hallucinations, things like that, all a bit worrying. Hopefully we'll get through that. And then, of course, it's just the endurance of, day in, day out, hour in, hour out, rowing, sleeping, eating, and repeat, So that's the mental side. And then there's the actual technical side, which is like navigation, safety at sea, all that sort of stuff. So we've been on various courses for that. And finally, there's learning about all the boat equipment. So we've had to, we're still doing that at the moment. So this Saturday we have our water maker course because, of course, we have to make our own water as we go along. So we have a machine that does that, a water maker that does that. So we're going on a course on how to make sure that we can repair it, rebuild it, etc. Couple of weeks after that, we're going on an electrical course in case all the electrics on the boat go down. Of course, if the electrics on the boat go down, then the water maker goes down. So all pretty fundamental stuff. And lots of training and preparation. In fact, I would never have believed how much training and preparation has been.
Yeah, it's a huge job. And obviously, two of you on a boat for that period of time. I mean, you and David, you've known each other for a long time. Tell me about the history between you guys and why you decided to do this.
Well, so it was originally my idea because I just, as I explained earlier, wanted to do something different and real. And of course, so I had a hit list. Originally, I wanted to do this as a squad, 4 people rowing across the Atlantic. And I wasn't looking at any records or anything like that. And so all the dead certs I had written down on my list, I approached, and they all ran 100 miles in the opposite direction. to my surprise, actually. But yeah, maybe it's not everyone's bottle, this thing. And so I knew David's father very well. In fact, David's father was 11 years older than me, and David is 11 years younger than me. And David's father was a great friend. His name was Rich. He had cancer in 2017, but he'd spent his life doing real things, particularly as a fisherman, catching crabs, putting food on the table, all that sort of stuff. And he inspired me. And after he died, I was just chatting to David, actually a couple of years later, really, 2019. And I said, look, I want to do this thing right across the Atlantic. Would you like to do it with me? And he said, well, can you do that? Is that a real thing? I said, well, Google it. And he came back to me and said, look, I'd love to do it. I need to I need to think it through and all the rest of it. Anyway, so we agreed. So it's pretty amazing that it's, one of my great friend's sons that I'm doing this with. And indeed, the pair of us will be a combined age of 124 when we do it. So we'll still be the world record holders in terms of the oldest pair ever to row in the ocean. Point really that when we discovered that, if we did it as a pair rather than a quad, because we were originally, or I was still thinking about getting another couple of rowers on board to make life a bit easier. When we discovered we'd be the world record holders, we thought we'd go just as two of us, which of course adds about 20 days to the suffering. But it's a nice one to have. And, if we can so our kind of mission statement is to remain as friends, get there safely and not be overtaken by the guy in the pink elephant suit.
Yes, that's very true. I hope you don't get overtaken by a guy in a pink elephant suit. That would be quite a story. Now we talked about some of the risks and, things like seasickness and how you're going to manage to eat and sleep and row. It's not a small undertaking. Are there any other risks as well? Because when we spoke last time, you were telling me stories about swordfish.
Marlin, actually, yes, which I guess is a type of swordfish. So in recent years, particularly in last year's race, there were only 20 boats in last year's race due to COVID. Normally there were about 30. This year, I think there are 40 because of the bad year last year. So it's a massive race this year. But last year, 4 of the 20 boats got attacked by marlins. And one of them, three of them were not serious. They hold the boat. And that means you have to go over the side, chop the spear off because it breaks off. The marlin's spear breaks off. But one of them sent a 30-centimetre spike up between one of the crew's legs while he was asleep in the cabin. So if it had been a couple of feet further forward, he'd probably have actually been killed by it. So that's a big risk. And they're talking about putting Kevlar in the boats and all that sort of stuff. And we're not sure whether or not that will work because we're told that actually a marlin strike at 50 miles an hour coming up from the deep would go straight through it. So that's a slight worry. Another team were harassed by a shark for a while a couple of years ago, and so they rang the safety officer of the race and said, well, we've been harassed by a shark for a while now. What should we do? And the safety officer said, well, he said, I don't know, but why don't you hit it with an oar? So they hit it with an oar, and it bit the oar in half. There are a few other hazards. Are obviously the sea state. So you get kind of waves coming from two directions. One is the kind of general, the normal wave direction, and the other will be affected by wind. So you get rogue waves and things like that. 40-foot swells sometimes, maybe higher. So yeah, it's all that kind of stuff really that we need to be thinking about. But we're hoping that most of those waves will be coming from behind and pushing us in the direction we want to go. And if they don't, then we have something called a para anchor, which is a big parachute that you deploy from the front of the boat, the bow of the boat, which goes under the water and hopefully stops you drifting backwards in the wrong direction too fast. So if it gets really nasty and the winds are in the wrong direction, then you deploy that and go and sit in the cabin and have a cup of tea, sometimes for days.
Wow. Wow. And actually, speaking about the boat itself, I mean, you can't just go rowing across the Atlantic on any old boat. Tell me a little bit more about the vessel itself. I mean, what kind of size is it? It sounds like it's quite technologically advanced.
Well, there's a company called Rennet Adventure that make most of the ocean rowing boats these days. And I think they are, they're advancing the technology all the time. Our boat was built in 2019. She's been across the Atlantic once, rowed by a brother and sister pair called the Seablings. And they were double record breakers. First of all, they were the first brother and sister pair, and secondly, they were the fastest mixed pair ever to row the Atlantic. So she's a record breaker already. She's 24 feet long. She's got two cabins. The one cabin is used for storage. The other cabin is where we circulate. So we will circulate through the rear cabin, the stern cabin. And so every 2 hours, one will come out, one will go in to that stern cabin. And she's kitted out with, all the normal stuff. So we've got a chart plotter, which is a GPS. We've got electronic positioning, indicating radio beacons in case things go wrong. We have to do a mayday. So we've got a couple of those, one on the boat, one in the life raft. We've got personal locator beacons, which we wear on our belts at all times. We are never unclipped from the boat, ever, apart from when we're in the cabin or sleeping. Even in calm conditions. So, and it's quite brutal out there. In fact, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a bit of a heat wave in the UK. You may remember, and we rowed from Succumbed to Falmouth and back, which is about 200 odd kilometres in that brutal, sunshine, and we're going to get quite a lot of that out there. So yeah, it's lots of things to think about and perhaps get concerned about. But I think the mental resilience that we need is I think our age will help with that. We hope.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And you seem very excited and very positive about it, which is the right way to be. What do you do about eating? What kind of foods do you eat when you're out there?
Well, this is a real issue at the moment for me because I'm finding it really difficult to find anything I like. The answer is basically dried packet food, and there are a variety of manufacturers that make it. I'm not a great rice fan, unfortunately, and nearly everything comes with rice. So I've been searching around for potato-based dried meals and things like that, which I far prefer. And basically, you get a packet of food and you pour boiling water into it, which we have to heat up on the boat. And a lot of people say that's the most dangerous thing on the boat, the gas burner that you use to heat water. So a lot of people don't bother; they just pour cold water in, leave it for an hour, and eat it cold. We think that's a bit heathen-like. So we're definitely going to try to heat up our water. Obviously not in really, really big seas and things like that. So we'll have to be sensible about it. But yeah, you pour your water into this packet, wait, whatever it says on the side of the packet, 10 minutes or something, and then it's supposedly edible. Well, I'm finding that isn't the case with most of the things. I had one unnamed dish the other night with some peas in it. I left it for 10 minutes and they were like bullets. And left it for 20 minutes and they were still like bullets, and after half an hour they were more like ball bearings than bullets, to be honest. So that's pretty disgusting. But the real challenge is that we have to eat probably in the region of 5,000 calories a day, which is probably 2.5 times the amount that I would normally eat in a day, and that involves swallowing chocolate bars, special supplements, and 3 or 4 of these dried meals. There is a tiny bit of relief on the horizon in that there are some wet meals that we're allowed to take, but they add an enormous amount of weight to the boat. And weight is a key issue on the boat rowing across the Atlantic because every extra pound you add slows you down. So we're going to take some ready-made wet meals in packets, and they do delicious things like sausages, beans, and omelette, and things like that in a lovely packet.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, well, anyway, compared to the size, it's delicious. So that's what we have to eat. And, of course, we have to make our own water to cook that in or heat it up with all that sort of stuff.
Gosh, wow. That doesn't sound particularly appetizing. And I suppose you don't want to put too much weight on before the race, because you were just saying, obviously, too much weight on the boat slows you down. But, there is a risk that you might get too thin.
Well, people typically lose 10 kilograms over the course of the race, so 22 pounds, stone and a half. One of the guys we know from last year lost 18 kilograms, which is quite a lot. So the answer is, I think the advice is that you put on a little bit of weight beforehand, but not too much. The other thing is that it's not just your own weight, but the race rules require you to take a certain amount of food per kilo of body weight. So the heavier you get, the more food you need to carry. So it's a double whammy in terms of weight.
Wow.
But we're making a massive saving. At the moment, we have the gel batteries in the boat, and the favoured batteries these days are lithium, as you probably know in electric vehicles and things like that. And believe it or not, we're going to save 38 kilograms by changing the batteries from gel batteries to lithium batteries. So I've said to my rowing partner, maybe we can put some wet meals in to make up some of that difference.
It's a good idea, actually. Wow, that's quite a difference in the battery weight. So
huge.
Obviously you're raising lots of money for a fabulous charity called Unlimited. Can you tell me a little bit about the charity and why you've chosen it?
Yeah, sure. So, my background has been, which I hinted at before, has been about advising entrepreneurs throughout my life, helping them grow their businesses. And I've become aware of exactly how many benefits that brings to communities. It creates jobs, creates wealth, creates philanthropy, all sorts of benefits that entrepreneurs bring to communities by doing those things. And so I thought, well, having done this all my life, probably not the answer to go off and try and raise money for a cancer charity or something. All very valuable, of course, and fantastic, but I don't think I'd have achieved anything by doing that. So I thought, well, what I need to do is to tap into this community and raise money for a charity that does this good work in trying to find entrepreneurs that create jobs and wealth. And I came across Unlimited, which is actually the formal name is the Foundation for Social Entrepreneurs. And they fund and support social entrepreneurs, typically in deprived areas. More than 50%, I think last year 60% were women, which is great because women don't get much funding to start businesses. It's just, they're in a minority there. I think nearly half of the people they help are BAME. So, it made huge sense to me to try to raise money for that cause. And it also engaged my community, the community I've worked with all my life. So we're doing pretty well so far, with all our pledges and sponsorships and actual donations received. Our gross funding total is now standing at £418,000.
Amazing.
So we've got about, of that actually, David and I have contributed £20,000. So we paid the entry fee. And we think the costs are going to be in the region of about 80,000. And they are, around things like, obviously the cost of the boat, less the resale value, transporting the boat from here to the Canaries where we start and then back from Antigua is an enormous cost. And then, everything else, boat equipment, food costs, travel costs, you name it, et cetera, et cetera. So we think somewhere around 80,000. So at the moment, we're probably approaching 350,000 for the charity.
That's absolutely amazing. And is that higher than what you were expecting? What was your initial target?
Wow, I've got this mad target of £1 million, but
well, it sounds like you're on the road to it.
Well, if we can get to if we can get to 500,000 or above, that will still be a worthwhile contribution. And well, we've got a sort of strategy, which is, at this point, it's still all about sponsors. But come the end of September, we have to finalise all the sponsorship because it's then at the point when we have to finalize the boat design and actually get it wrapped with all the sponsors' logos on. So after that, sponsors won't be able to get logos on the boat. So then we convert over to public donations. And we're hoping that the networks and supporters we've got on board, like Lockbox, are going to publicise what we're trying to achieve, and that, you know, people will give £5 or £10 or whatever it is. And if we get enough of them, then that is going to make a real difference. So we've got Crowdcube on board with their 400,000 investors, which is brilliant. And I've got something like 21 or 2 entrepreneur networks also on board. Some of them are showing signs of being active and some of them aren't. But we'll you know, hopefully if it gets more exciting and we're actually out there and people are following us, then they'll start to get active.
Absolutely, and we're going to hopefully follow your journey. So we're going to do a bit of recording with you for another LOQPOD before you set off, and then hopefully we'll speak to you mid-Atlantic and then again at the end. So that's something to look forward to as well for next year when we can celebrate your achievement. But if people are listening to this now and they're either a business that want to maybe get involved in sponsorship or perhaps just an individual that would like to help sponsor or donate, how can people get involved?
So didn't talk about the naming of the boat, did I? I tried to think about all sorts of names, but for the team, actually, not the boat. The boat is called Lily, all right? And she's always been Lily, and she will always be Lily, and we love Lily. And that's an amazing story, which I must just tell you about, because she chose us. We saw her in La Gomera when we went out to do a test run to see if we were going to do this thing. And we got to meet the original brother and sister pair. And then he rang me up after his race and said, "Do you want to buy it?" Wanted far too much money. So I said no. And it just happened that we went up to Rannoch Adventure, which is the manufacturer, on a particular day. And it happened to be the only day that they were also there, the brother and sister pair, renting their boat to someone to do a round Britain attempt. Almost at the same time, our web designer, who was building our website, came up with a front page with a picture of Lily on it. Because we didn't have a boat at that stage. And so everything came together, and the guys, the Seablings, then said, "You can have her for a bit less money." And all. So she chose us, and she's called Lily. But the team name, I was trying to think, you know, all these clever names. You get all these, you know, awesome, you know, OAR and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I thought, well, hang on, I'm raising money for entrepreneurs. Why don't I call it the Entrepreneurship? And so the answer to your question, how do people find us? The entrepreneurship.co.uk is our website. My contact details are there. Anyone who wants to get in touch, just email me, or I'm not sure whether my phone number's there, but I'm very good with email. So all the details are there. Indeed, also all our social channels. So we're on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff.
And we'll put a link to your site on this LOQPOD channel as well, so people can click directly through as well. Because you know, I think it's an amazing feat that you're taking on here, Guy. And you know, I wish you and David all the best. I suppose my last question to you really is: through all the training and the preparation that you guys have been doing, is there anything in particular you've really learnt about yourself during this?
Well, that's the only thing I've learnt about myself. I think. I've always, you know, I think you can eat an elephant one bite at a time, right? That's my kind of view on life. These are big bites that I'm taking. And so I'm, you know, I as I said, 2.5 years ago, this was, you know, dream come true. It's going to be fantastic, blah, blah, blah. Now I've got less than 4 months to go before we set off. It's all just getting a bit daunting, and there is so much to do. I'm waking up at 3:00 in the morning thinking, where are those locking wheel nuts for the bearings? Which box are they in? And how do we make sure we don't forget those? Because, you know, if our seat seize up, then we're not going to be able to row and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know what I've learned about myself. I realise that I've taken on something enormous. Especially at my age, you know, I'll be 69 next April. So that is, and I suppose I do have fears which I wasn't sure I would have. But the first week, I'm pretty fearful of. I'm fearful of getting ill, sick. I don't mean seasick particularly. I mean, that won't be pleasant, but hopefully we'll get over that. But properly ill in some way, which happens more frequently to 68-year-olds than it does to 25-year-olds. These are the sorts of things. But so far, so good. We are. There's a lot of bits of elephant that we're biting off every day now, and we're chewing them and getting them down, and we're slowly working our way towards that start line. So, and then of course it's a completely new ball game. All the admin and planning goes out the window, and then it's a physical endurance and mental endurance challenge. So, yeah, we're doing well, and my partner David is also doing well, and we're trying our hardest to get fit. He's much fitter than me. He's done Ironman and all sorts of stuff. So, and he's also 11 years younger. So, it's going to be it's going to be interesting. I told him, by the way, that he's doing the rowing and I'm doing the cooking.
Well, I think that's only fair. At least you won't have to worry about eating just rice then. Brilliant. Well, Guy, thank you so much indeed for talking to me today, and I wish you all the best. And I'm looking forward to following your journey across the Atlantic come December. But very best of luck.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course.
Which is that on Facebook there is a channel called Dot Watchers. So anyone who wants to watch the race can actually watch it through the Dot Watchers on Facebook. And if they just when they apply to join that group, they just put in the entrepreneurship as the boat they're following, and then hopefully the organisers will accept them. And they'll be able to see us as we go across. Obviously, the dots are all the boats going across the Atlantic.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Well, all the best, and we'll speak to you just before the race. So speak to you in December.
Perfect.
Thanks very much, Guy.